In this edition of Global Print, I'm going to talk to you about a very special, a very unusual relationship that India has in the neighborhood with Bangladesh. Now, you know, dear viewer, that in the wake of the derogatory comments against the Holy Prophet made by two former spokespersons of the BJP, Nupur Sharma and Naveen Jindal, one has been suspended, the other expelled by the party. The Islamic world has been up in arms against the BJP, and several countries, several organizations have very strongly criticized India for these remarks against the Holy Prophet. But there has been one country that has kept absolutely quiet, and that is Bangladesh. Now, to explain why this is happening, why Bangladesh has been so quiet, this, of course, is a Muslim majority country right inside South Asia. I'm going to try and explain to you all these issues that are coming up. But before that, dear viewer, I'd like to make an appeal to you. Please do subscribe, pay just a little bit for ThePrint's free, fair, objective, and unhyphenated journalism. It's very little money. All you have to do is click on the join button, pay that money, and become a subscriber, for which you will, of course, get special benefits and privileges that non-subscribers don't have. You have been helping us, encouraging us these past several months and years during the pandemic. And as we come off the pandemic, I do hope that you will continue to do so. Now, back to my column Global Print on ThePrint's website, which I would encourage you to read. And in this video, I'm going to try and explain why this relationship with Bangladesh is so special and why Bangladesh has kept absolutely quiet in the wake of the ruling BJP's spokespersons or former spokespersons who have made these horribly insulting remarks against the Holy Prophet. The Islamic world, as you all know, have been up in arms these last 10 days or so, but Bangladesh has been very quiet. And I'm going to tell you, so full disclosure, dear viewer, before I explain or go any further, I was part of a group of Indian journalists visiting Bangladesh last week on an invitation from the Bangladesh government, sponsored by that government. We traveled to Dhaka as well as to Cox's Bazar, which is right on the tip of Bangladesh, a beautiful part of the country, a beautiful part of South Asia, a very long sandy beach. It's said that it's the longest natural beach in the world, over 125 kilometers long. And this is how I have started my column this week, which is that when you stand on the beach in Cox's Bazar and your toes sink into the very, very soft sand, you can ignore the fact that just a few kilometers beyond Cox's Bazar is a little town called Teknaf. And on Friday, after the Jummah prayers, a big procession was taken out against these insulting remarks made against the Holy Prophet by those two ruling BJP's politicians. Again, when you're in Cox's Bazar and the warm waters of the Bay of Bengal, the gentle roar from those warm waters lapping against your feet, it's very easy to forget that in Dhaka, at the big mosque in Dhaka, the Baitul Mukarram Mosque, a huge protest was taken out. In fact, in several mosques across Bangladesh last week, after the Jummah prayers, after the Friday prayers, big protests, big processions were taken out against the ruling BJP's, those two spokespersons, and the remarks they made against the Holy Prophet. But the government of Bangladesh has kept very, very quiet, not opened its mouth at all, not said one critical word about the Indian government. Now, why is that? So we asked, our group of journalists visiting Dhaka asked the information minister, Mr. Hassan Mahmood, why this is true. And he had something very interesting to say. He said that, of course, anywhere and everywhere, when there is an insult against the Holy Prophet, the Bangladesh government will come out and we will be critical of anything that is said against the Holy Prophet. But in this particular situation, the government of India has taken a strong stand, and we congratulate the government of India for doing so. Now, Mr. Mahmood was, of course, referring to the sacking of Naveen Jindal and the suspension of Nupur Sharma from the BJP, which he described in very glowing terms, which Mr. Mahmood described in very glowing terms. But the question is, why is it that Mr. Mahmood would be so effusive and so warm about India, especially when the rest of the Islamic world has been so critical of it on this particular question. Now, I'm going to make 3 points and explain to you why, in my opinion, this is happening. The first is that Bangladesh recognizes that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is amongst the most powerful leaders, not just in South Asia, but elsewhere across the world. The fact that India is part of the Quad, the fact that India is part of the G20, which Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be attending in Germany. There is a summit meeting of the G20 later this month. And on the way back from that, he is planning to go to the UAE, which was also very critical of India on the BJP spokesperson's or the former spokesperson's remarks. So India being a member of the Quad, India being a member of the G20, India being a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is led by China. India, of course, being the largest country in South Asia, not just in terms of size, population, but also economy. So Bangladesh and its Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who, by the way, is a very politically astute leader, recognizes that she has no alternative but to deal with this very powerful Prime Minister next door, the Prime Minister of India. She recognizes that the Congress party, which 50 long years ago helped India break up Pakistan and liberate Bangladesh, allow this new country to come into being, that Congress party is today reduced to very little. When it gets angry or when it's making any political moves or any political statements, it's reduced to fulminating on social media. And we've seen how the party has been protesting on the streets of Delhi these last couple of days. But guess why? All they're doing is protesting against the questioning of Rahul Gandhi by the Enforcement Directorate. Now, of course, I'm not going into why the ED is questioning Mr. Gandhi, but the fact remains that the people of the Congress party, its members, have not come out in the streets to protest other things. For example, you could argue that why are they not protesting against the demolition of houses of innocent people, but they are protesting about their own leaders. So there is something wrong somewhere. Now, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina realizes that the Congress party is actually reduced to very little, that the regional parties in India, whether it's the Trinamool, the Aam Aadmi Party, these powerful regional parties are exactly that, regional parties. They don't have a national footprint. The only two parties that still have a national footprint is the BJP and the Congress, and we know what the situation of the Congress is like. So Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, being a very practical person, realizes that Prime Minister Modi is here to stay for some time, and that if she has to carry her government and make it stronger and make it economically prosperous, make Bangladesh economically prosperous for her people, then she must get along with India. That is why everywhere that we went in Bangladesh these last few days, not just the Information Minister, Mr. Hassan Mahmood, but just ordinary people across the country said one thing in common, which is that we are grateful to India for helping us, for liberating Bangladesh in the 1971 war, for paying the ultimate sacrifice. Now, of course, that refers to the 3,900 Indian soldiers, to the 10,000 wounded soldiers in the 1971 war. So that sentiment very much alive and well in Bangladesh after 50 years. And as you know, dear viewer, Bangladesh is celebrating its 50th birthday. It's the 50th anniversary of its existence this year. So this refusal to criticize India over the derogatory remarks about the Holy Prophet is embedded in this recognition that India is a powerful nation, that Prime Minister Modi is a powerful leader, and that the BJP is here to stay. Now, remember that when Home Minister Amit Shah a few years ago described Bangladeshi infiltrators into India, again, that was not a very kind comment. He described them, he called them dimak, or termites. There were a couple of people in Bangladesh who said that this was not acceptable, that they did not see this as a statement by the government of India, but somebody who made them in his private capacity. But again, nobody said very much. So most Bangladeshis, including the government, including Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her cabinet, more or less ignored the statement and swallowed the insult. Another interesting nugget that I'd like to share with you is that this interaction that that Indian journalists that we had with Mr. Hassan Mahmood, the information minister, in Dhaka over the weekend, we asked him, so when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina comes to India, and she's expected to come in a few months from now, what is going to be her agenda? And is there going to be an agreement on the sharing of the Teesta River waters? You remember back in 1996, dear viewer, when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina first became Prime Minister, for the first time, the Ganga Waters Accord was signed between India and Bangladesh. So nearly, or more than 25 years down the line, is there going to be an agreement on the Teesta River water sharing? And here is what Mr. Hassan Mahmood said, very interestingly. He said, this is not the central government subject, this is the provincial government subject. So Prime Minister Hasina can easily go to Delhi, to India, and talk to Prime Minister Narendra Modi about it. Now, this refusal on the part of Sheikh Hasina's cabinet minister to indict once again the Narendra Modi government and in fact lay the blame at West Bengal's door, you can imagine now the point that I'm trying to make, which is that Dhaka, or Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, certainly doesn't want to antagonize Prime Minister Modi. So the second point that I'd like to make is that remember that these protests against the derogatory remarks made about the Holy Prophet are taking place, like I said to you earlier, they are taking place in the mosques or outside the mosques across Bangladesh, whether in Dhaka, Teknaf, Mirpur. Several places have witnessed these protests. But guess what? Like I said before, the Bangladesh government has clamped down on them with a heavy hand. They haven't let these protests get out of hand at all. So they're controlling the mosques and they are controlling the protests. So in a sense, the Bangladesh government being very smart about handling the whole thing and sending two messages actually, telling India, this is what we are up against, which is that there are these radical Islamist parties or people still inside Bangladesh, that you cannot trust them, that the Bangladesh government has to come down on them with a heavy hand. And the second message is that there is no one else but the Awami League, which is the ruling party in Bangladesh. It's the only party that can handle this. Now, the third point that I'd like to make is that these messages have been very well received in India. And in a sense, the Indian government also reciprocates that sentiment, which is that the ruling Awami League, a very powerful party, elections will be held next year, next December, late 2023, when Sheikh Hasina goes up and makes a claim to win at the elections again and bids for an unprecedented fifth term as Prime Minister. Another point that I'd like to make here, Sheikh Hasina also sending the message to India that unlike India, where the ruling BJP's spokesperson forgot to draw the line or didn't even understand where the red lines were regarding the Holy Prophet, regarding the sacrosanct place that he has or the Prophet has in Islam. Unlike India, inside Bangladesh, when anything happens against the Hindu minority, the Bangladesh Prime Minister and the government come down with a severe hand, come down with a heavy hand to control any disturbances that take place against the minority, against the Hindu minority. For example, last year in Kumila and some other places in Bangladesh during the Durga Puja, when there was some damage to property at a Durga Puja pandal, the government of Bangladesh came down heavily against the miscreants. They were locked up, thrown into jail, and the victim of the vandalism were heavily compensated up to 2 or 3 times. So this message that to India, it's a subtle message, but it's a very real one, that you cannot control your hotheads, but we certainly can. So on this note, dear viewer, I will end my video. So do let me know what you think about it. And I'd encourage you to read my column, Global Print, and do let me know what you think about my piece on my visit to Bangladesh. Thank you so much for watching.